Hello, Professor Morgan here with a video on compare contrast essays. So let's say you get to do a compare contrast essay. First of all, follow what your instructor tells you. Okay, I'm just giving you some general ideas of what compare contrast is, and some other insight. Okay, so let's get right to it, shall we? So let's say, all right. So let's take a look at this picture here. So when we are comparing things, we're like, how are things alike? Well, we've got it looks like two young girls. They both have brown hair. They're both eating watermelon. They're both wearing dresses. Okay. So that's how things are alike. Now, when you look at contrast, same picture, how are things different? Well, she has her eyes open. She has her eyes closed. Her hair is a little more curly. Her dress has got more purple to it. Her dress is a little, got some different colors to it. So we can look at how things are similar and how things are different. Let's look at another example. Okay. Oh, the infamous orange and apple. You can often hear say, "Oh, we're talking apples and oranges here." Well, how are these alike? Well, they're both considered fruits. Okay. I mean, generally both considered healthy. They both grow on trees. I mean, so there are some things that they do have in common. But when we look at it again, how are they different? Well, there's a lot of things that they're different about. Generally, you'll eat the peel of an apple, maybe not necessarily the peel of an orange. And there's a number of other things we'll give some examples about that later on in this video. Okay, so what's the point? Well, when it comes to compare and contrast, it's helping us. Often we use this in our lives where we're talking about good choices and bad choices. We often, or just maybe not even good choices or bad choices, just between maybe preferences of what we're going to choose between whatever. We use compare and contrast all the time. Okay, it helps us make choices. Let's say we get up, we're going to have breakfast, and we go to the pantry or whatever, or the cupboard. What are we going to have for breakfast that morning? Okay. In your mind, you're doing compare and contrast. You're figuring out, okay, what am I going to do? Okay. So, compare and contrast works well for the following to help figure out that one thing is better than another. That's probably where it's used the most common. It can also be used to show that things that seem different are actually alike. Some people say, oh, those things are completely different. Well, using compare and contrast, we say, well, actually, they're a lot more alike than you think. Or contrariwise, people say, oh, those things are exactly the same. And you say, well, actually, if we use compare and contrast, we can see they're actually quite different. Okay. And we'll give some examples about that in just a second here. Example. Okay. So, depending on when you watch this video, this kind of shows you how, when this video was made. So we can compare, let's say, the Apple iPhone 14 Pro versus the Apple 15 Pro. So let's say you want to upgrade. You'd want to say, well, what do they have in common? What's the difference? You would use compare contrast. These are two things that are really similar. They're made by the same company. They're a phone, but there are some differences, right? Okay. So you can, it's like, and you may decide, hey, I need to get a new phone, and they have both the 14 and the 15. Why would you choose one over the other? There may be a bunch of different reasons. Okay. Or you can say, oh, they're the same thing. Well, maybe they are, maybe they're not. Okay. Or you could go to a different approach where you could basically say, okay, well, which is better, Apple or Android? Okay. Now, I mean, again, there depends on what's important to you and, what they do. And, it's I mean, you can look at it from a technical point of view, you can look at it from a social point of view. It just for giggles, I mean, my wife and I both have Androids, and our kids, when they got phones, they wanted iPhones. And when I asked them why, they said, well, that's because that's what all my friends have. I'm like, okay, that was their reasoning, because their friends had iPhones and that's what their friends knew how to use. And so that's why they wanted to get it. Okay, so there's that. Okay, so when using compare and contrast, make sure the subjects are at least somewhat alike. Okay, they have to be somewhat alike. And let me give you an example. Okay, let's say that you're trying to prove that you're trying to show that number 6 here, this football player, he is the best college running back in the nation. Okay, I'm like, oh, well, why do you believe that? Oh, because he can run much faster than my niece. Okay, well, just because he can run faster than your niece does not make him the best running back in the nation. You'd have to compare him to other running backs in college sports. So that's an example of why they have to be somewhat similar. Okay. And when using compare contrast, you need to stay focused on your purpose. And your purpose is going to be defined by your thesis, which we're going to talk about here in just a second. Because sometimes, as people are writing, they'll start going off tangents, and we want to make sure that we stay on target and stay focused on what we're trying to do. Okay. And also, then again, know your thesis. Okay. Formulate a strong thesis. What would be an example of a strong thesis for a compare contrast essay? Well, let's take a look. Okay. A strong element for a thesis statement would be you include the name of the subjects that are being compared and contrasted. So let's go back to the, you know, Android versus, the Android phone is better than the iPhone. Okay. So you name the subject that you're having. Okay. You indicate whether the essay is going to focus on the subject similarities, the differences, or both. Okay. So basically, it's going to be like, hey, one is better than the other, or these are more similar than they're not, or they're more different than they're not. Okay. So, it really is like the stance you're taking. And you need to have at least, the main points you're going to be using for compare contrast. Usually you should have at least 3. Okay, so let's take a look at an example of some strong thesis statements. Okay, the Samsung Galaxy S5 is better than the iPhone 6 based on battery life, processor speed, and size of video display. Okay, it's a little dated, but so we have the two things we're comparing: the Galaxy versus the Samsung versus the iPhone. Okay, we're claiming that the stance is that this is better than that one. Why? Based on battery life, processor speed, and size of the video display. So this one sentence is a very strong thesis statement because it has the things that we're comparing. These are things that are somewhat similar. Okay, we're making a claim that one is better than the other, or they're more similar, or they're more different, whatever. Okay, and we're giving the reasons why we're looking at that. Okay, and these things maybe are important to whomever. Okay, now notice the elements again: the items being compare and contrast, the position being taken, and the way they are being compared and contrasted. Okay, so what's wrong with this thesis statement? I am better than you. Okay, well, pause the video, think about it. Is it naming the two things we're comparing? Yes. I and you. Okay, is it making a stance? Yes, it is. Okay, I am better than you. So what's missing? Why? Or why am I better than you? That's not a good thesis statement because it's just making a statement. Okay, let's look at another one. The Honda Accord has great gas mileage, excellent safety rating, and retains its value over time. Okay, so great, fantastic. So it's got these elements. What is it missing? You can pause the video, think about it. All right, we're coming back to it. So we are definitely we're talking about, well, we're looking at gas mileage, excellent safety rating, and retains its value over time. That's good. But what are we comparing the Honda Accord to? It's not stated, okay? And it's not really making a stance. It's just making a statement about the Honda Accord, okay? How about this one? JCC and NC State both offer classes in English, math, and science, okay? So what's wrong with the thesis statement as far as compare contrast? Okay. Well, you could argue whether it's wrong or right, okay? You could actually, it'd be better if you were to say, you know, um, when comparing Johnson Community College and North Carolina State University, they're both similar in their beginning courses because they both offer English, math, and science. But it's not really clear. They're just making a statement here. They're not really explaining why this is a thing. It's not really taking a strong stance and explaining the purpose of it. Okay, so when using compare contrast, make sure that you, when you're picking those elements of what is you're going to be using, that you pick the good ones, okay? The best points to be discussed. So if you're trying to pick, between two cars and say, well, the Honda Accord is better than the Toyota Prius because the Honda Accord's button for its audio is painted blue instead of white. Really? Is that the best point? Is that the reason why you're going to pick a car? Is because the color of the knob for the audio? I mean, really? Is that the thing? Okay. And then also organize the way you present the information. And there's a great little outline showing up here. Okay. So you can do about everything that's, about one thing and then the other. or you can do it by point. So if you do, there's two different ways to do it. So you could say everything about, so again, if we're going to go to the iPhones, let's go Android versus iPhone. So we can talk everything about the Android, and then we can tell everything about the iPhone. That's one way to do it. Or you could do the alternate, which is point by point, which honestly, my personal opinion is the better way to do it, where you're talking about each item, each element individually. Okay, so for example, if we're looking at these apples and oranges, the point by point method would be, okay, when you're looking at apples and oranges, you may say, they're actually, more different than they are similar, because number one, they come in different colors. Then I would say what the colors the apple comes in, and then what colors the orange comes in. And then the other thing is like, okay, well, do people eat the skin? Okay, that's another point they're going to be making. It's like, well, we'll talk about the apple. Yeah, they do eat the skin. Orange, no, they don't. Okay. And is it naturally broken up into sections? Well, the apple, not really. The orange, yeah, it is. Okay. So instead of talking about everything apple and then everything orange, we're actually talking about the different aspects and we're talking about the comparison of each one. Okay. So, and also when you're doing transition types, between the two, there's some phrases here you can use by the way of contrast. On the other hand, however, but, okay. So these are ways of distinguishing when you're transitioning between one item and another item if you're doing the point by point method. Okay, so we're going to finish up with a basic outline for a compare contrast essay. You would have your introduction, which includes the thesis statement. Okay, now you have, when you, like I said, if you're talking about, the iPhones, or it's like when you're comparing iPhones to Android phones, and let's say you're talking about battery life as one of the things. Well, you could have your whole first paragraph be just all about battery life. And the second one was, let's say, I don't know, size of the screen. Okay, that could be your whole second paragraph. And then three, I don't remember what the third one was. Let's say number of apps it can use. Okay, so your paragraphs will actually will kind of like be the things that you discussed in your thesis statement, and then you'd wrap it up with a conclusion that kind of like summarizes the main points. So there's your basic insight on a compare contrast essay. Hopefully that'll help you kind of get your head wrapped around how it works and how it's kind of constructed and the purpose behind it. All right. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful day.